Hi, everyone. Welcome to the panel. Today, we're going to be talking about delivering value within the first year of the customer lifecycle. Today, we have two special guests. But before we get into that, kind of just give you a brief overview of the agenda. So we'll do introductions. We'll go into a fun icebreaker carrying on the theme of gainsight and childlike joy. And then we'll kind of kick off the panel overall. We'll be kind of looking for questions as you go. But again, hopefully you all enjoy the conversation. So here we go. Just a quick introduction. My name is Elliot Halverson. I'm a manager of customer success here at Gainsight. Been with the company for almost 4.5 years. So have a lot of different experiences. Definitely know this resonates with delivering value. So again, welcome to the show. And I'll kick it over to Brett to introduce himself.
Hey, thanks, Elliot. Really appreciate it. My name is Brett Connor, and I am the Chief Operating Officer at Athena Health. And I'll talk more later about what Athena Health does. And I helped stand up the customer success function that we have. And it's a real area of passion for me. And looking forward to the conversation today. I think I'll hand it over to Alex and she'll introduce herself.
Thanks, Brett. Thanks, Elliot. Hi, everyone. Alex Rosa. I'm with Salesforce. I lead our transformation strategy team for our customer solutions organization for our Tableau product. Really excited to be here. I have been in customer success for a very long time, leading global teams, and I'm based out of Vancouver, Canada. So great to be here.
Awesome. Well, as I mentioned, like all things Gainsight, we always like to do a fun icebreaker. Mine's not too wild and crazy, but it's always a good one. So the icebreaker today is, what is your favorite movie? Again, it can be genres, types, a whole lot. I think for me, a go-to is Step Brothers. It's kind of one of those movies that you can just stop and always enjoy, but that's mine. Brett, how about you? What's your favorite movie?
Well, it's a tough one. There's a lot of great movies that I like to watch and rewatch. One that I just recently rewatched, which is on my list, is What About Bob? And I really like the transformation of Bob Wiley through his persistence into someone who's becomes much more in control of his life. And I just love his tenacity. Although if I were his psychiatrist, like Dr. Marvin in the movie, I would be definitely alarmed and afraid. But funny movie and great to see that transformation.
Well, I'm going to have to rewatch both of those. Thought long and hard about this. One that I've recently watched and always kind of come back to is The Name of the Rose. Love a good mystery, and just introduced my 13-year-old to it. And so it was really interesting watching it with him and seeing his reaction to it and what he took out of that. But definitely have to go back to Step Brothers.
What was his reaction out of watching that movie?
Very mixed, very mixed. We had a very big conversation afterwards about the Middle Ages. But he's a big Sean Connery fan, so that did help.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, awesome. Well, before we get in kind of the main conversation here, just for everyone who's joining us today, we do kind of want to just set the stage. For the context of today, we're going to be talking about delivering time to value within the first year from a SaaS offering, so cloud-based, subscription-based offering. So just so everyone's on the same page overall, wanted to give that context. But without further ado, I think the best way to kind of frame this up would be really just from Alex and Brett, understanding how your organizations, Tableau or Salesforce and Athena Health, really define customer success and deliver time to value. So Brett, do you want to kind of kick the conversation off?
Yeah, sure. Happy to take that. Well, first of all, I'll just tell you a little bit more about Athena Health, and I'll keep it brief. But Athena Health is a cloud-based software as a service solution stack that's really targeted at the ambulatory side of healthcare in the U.S. Over the past 12 months, about 30% of the U.S. patient population has gone in to see a medical provider that uses Athena Health as its platform. And that platform is one that allows our practices to check in and check out patients, to run their practice through practice management, see patients and document the encounters through the electronic health record we provide. And we also provide all the patient engagement tools and the revenue cycle management for those practices. And our model is interesting because we basically don't charge upfront for the software for our core Athena One offering. On a monthly basis, we take a percentage of the collections that we help those practices bring in the door as they run their business. So we've got a really exciting model when it comes to customer success because we are very much in an aligned incentives model where we are focused on driving outcomes for our clients. And it's exciting for a customer success manager because if we can help our medical practices improve their performance and drive better patient outcomes. It's great for healthcare, but it means that as we help them do better, we do better. And so with that being said, that's what we do. The way that we think about customer success is, we generally think about all of what we do at Athena Health as customer success. Our job is to hopefully help healthcare become better, to drive great patient outcomes through the medical practices that we serve. And we do have, for every single client, a named customer success manager that supports them. But all of the company has, as part of their goals, improving customer loyalty, managing customer attrition down below target levels. And everyone, when we think about building a product, when we think about delivering a solution, we think about what are the outcomes we can drive for the clients that we serve. And so that's what's really exciting about what we do and the culture that we have. Because we are helping medical practices serve patients and run their business, and we need to help them bring money in the door to pay for the work that we do. And they're often coming from another system. It's very important to us that we get to time to value, because we want to make sure that those medical practices can quickly ramp up to cash flow and hopefully have much better cash flow on our platform than they did on their old platform. And it's also extremely important to us that right out of the gate, they're delivering the right care to their patients and closing key care gaps, so they can not only deliver good healthcare to patients, but also ensure that they're doing well in the value-based care programs that many of healthcare organizations need to follow today. So that gives you a little bit of a sense for what we do, why customer success is so important and how we think about it. But really, customer success is a team sport, and we try and get everyone to engage in that team sport in what we do. So I'll stop there.
Awesome. And Alex, if you want to kind of give us a rundown of, how you guys look at CS and how your organization delivers value within that first year.
Yeah, certainly. A lot of what Brett said really resonated with me in terms of, one of our core values at Salesforce is customer success, and it permeates everything we do. We are constantly talking about customer success. And I know a lot of us talk about customer success as being the customer success organization, but we truly believe that everyone within the organization has a role to play. And, we constantly talk about a one success motion, like how do we show up to our customers? Do we show up as one team? How is everything that we do interconnected to really deliver an impactful customer experience? From a success perspective and the Tableau side of the business, it's all about data and analytics. We certainly saw this, during the pandemic in terms of our customers coming to us because they had very, overnight challenges in terms of how do I address this? What do I do with my people? How do I make business decisions? So a lot of what we do is like, how do we get our customer into our product really quickly, know where to find it? So, when I think about, time to value, it's how quickly can you make that happen? And I know we're going to talk about this further, but for me, it can be from that first conversation with the customer. It doesn't have to be after they've come on board. It's really about thinking up front in terms of what does the customer want to achieve and how can we help them get there quickly. So, and continue that, because we all want our customers to be customers for life.
Absolutely. And kind of moving a little bit further down in terms of the one team concept and really more of a customer or company-wide initiative to really drive time to value. Within that concept, do you guys have specific teams that really help drive that first motion of ensuring the client gets ramped up rather quickly, right? So, Brett, from your point of view, how do we help deliver cash flow really right away? And then more importantly, while delivering quality care for your clients. And then Alex, from your side, really, how do we help your end user clients understand where the data is and then quickly getting that established? So if you guys could kind of just give us some more insights into how you guys have split that role, that responsibility up to really accelerate time to value overall. And Brett, if you want to kick this one off too.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to start. One of the things that we've been really thoughtful about over the past couple of years is getting the entire company aligned around what we call the client performance framework. So we have worked across the entire organization to frame that. Where are the ways that we can create value for our clients? For us, it's around how do we help them to drive better revenue cycle performance? How do we help them perform better in value-based care? How do we drive great patient outcomes? And how do we deliver a great provider experience? And we've created this value framework that maps to those things. And we've actually trained every single employee at athenahealth on that framework. Now, part of why I share that is when we think about, a new customer, a new client, our sales team and our marketing team go to market by framing out the type of value that we think we can deliver to our clients. And they try and set expectations around how quickly you will get to that value. So we're trying to set the right expectations up front. When we have completed the sale, we actually pretty much immediately then begin the process of determining who the customer success manager will be for that account. And then we have an onboarding team that supports that onboarding motion. As part of that onboarding motion, we kind of reset with the client, hey, what did the sales team tell you? Let's validate that that still makes sense. Let's reinforce the ways in which we create value based upon that value framework. Let's make you aware of the fact that you're going to have a customer success manager. And then in the onboarding process, and we do have a dedicated onboarding team that does that, but they collaborate with the customer success manager from the very get-go. We then have checklists, and we think about the steps that we need to go through to make sure that client is ready once they flip the switch on using that cloud-based software to capture value. And so, we have tried to think upfront around what it means to create value. We've tried to instrument value, and then we've also tried to make sure that as part of that onboarding process, we align all of our conversations around that. And we try not to tell a client, hey, start using the software to run your practice until we really think they are ready. Along the way, it's not only about having the checklist around making sure the components of the cloud solution are configured properly, but it's about making sure people are trained properly on the end user workflows. And then also making sure they know the resources they can use once they are live and running to stay up to date and to be performant and to be successful. And then that's where the customer success manager comes in and helps continue to provide coaching along the way. So those are some of the dimensions of what we do. So yeah, we do have a distinct onboarding team. But as I mentioned earlier, it's a team sport, and it's about making sure you've got the right expectations and framework that surrounds it.
I love that. I'm completely agree with that as well. It definitely is a team sport. And I mean, that saying, it takes a village, I think that's definitely true with regards to customer success. I think very importantly, it is important up front to, when you're in the sales process, to, as Brett says, really understand, what is the customer trying to achieve with this, and what are the use cases. And I think in our sphere, in the analytics sphere, it can be many different things. And it's really understanding that and having a clear handover from the sales team into the customer success world to really understand that. Because from a customer success perspective, we may not have been involved in those conversations. I love it when we actually are, especially with our larger, more complex accounts, because then we can start doing some of the upfront work and even some of the onboarding with our customers, even prior to them coming on board. But to be honest, a lot of the times it's post-sale. And similarly, we do have a team that's dedicated to onboarding, and we do one-to-many onboardings in terms of, depending on what the customers purchase. In our world, we both have on-prem and cloud solutions. So we need to really look at that. And in terms of, being able to be as personalized as we can with our customers, given that fact that our customers are everywhere in the world and coming to us with different needs. So really starting to think about, what are they trying to solve for? How do we address that in terms of their onboarding, and how they're interacting with us. And that could be through a named CSM, but that also could be through self-service. We have a lot of customers that self-service, and I think what's become very critical for our customers is something that we've built out, which is our Tableau Blueprint, which is a framework for our customers to learn about all those great practices that we've learned and our customers and our partners have learned through the years in terms of how to really be a data-driven organizations. So yes, we have individuals who are looking after onboarding, but I think the other thing is that you really need to make sure from an onboarding perspective that you have multiple channels that a customer can go to and the individual can go to self-service, or that we're directing information to them. So I really think that whole idea of omni-channel success becomes incredibly important as we go forward.
Awesome. And I wanted to just quickly double click into one key topic you both mentioned, because it is really vital to really helping to accelerate the time to value. For the CS community, we sometimes hear about it as value realization. But I was hoping you guys could expand a little bit more on how you guys developed your framework to deliver best practices and really help train the entire company org on how to then go deliver that, right? Versus kind of it being disjointed or people having tribal knowledge on how to do it. So just curious if you guys can elaborate a little bit about how you consolidated it and then kind of really built that up to align that first year journey for customers. And Alex, actually, we'll start with you. We'll go the other way.
I'd say it's pretty complex, to be honest. I mean, if you think about our customer base, you could look at that in terms of customer segments, industries, products that they're using. We've gone at this many different ways. I think what's really important when I think about this is that no matter where my customer is in the world, I want them to have a consistent experience, particularly regarding onboarding, because that is so critical. What I've learned through the years is those first 3 months in subscription are incredibly important. We need to get our customers in our products, using it, starting to see results as quickly as possible. So I think that's something that we've really focused in on, particularly in the last 2 years, in terms of how do we build out that process for an organization, but also for the individual, and starting to think about all the different channels that we have and how do we bring them together. Because I think in the past, I know that I certainly did this, there was like one medium that we use and we expected all our customers to come in and that. But now it's really about thinking about the customer journey, thinking about how our customers come in to our organization, how do they use our products. We have a lot of partners. A lot of our customers go through partners as well. So what is that journey going to be? So I think it's really important in understanding how your customers are coming in, what are they looking for, and then how do you build that consistent experience for them up front. And you can do that many different ways. I mean, sometimes the first way our customer kind of engages with us is through engagement marketing. And being able to direct them to the right kind of material, and hopefully they'll take part in that. Or it's through our sales team, or in terms of once they're actually a customer coming on board, maybe that first call that they have with our customer success manager. So I think that's really important, and Brett mentioned this. It's really, I think, what's important up front is having that understanding the business value that the customer wishes to achieve, and then how, as a expanded customer success organization, like everyone, we can make that happen. So that's, I think, is very critical. And I've found that, in past roles that I've had in success, if you don't have that conversation with the customer and identify that up front, you're going to be missing the mark in that first year, because you really want to understand what's important to them. We have our own goals, but it's really important to understand what is important to the customer and what they're hoping to achieve from a strategic, business, financial perspective, and then build your motions around that.
Awesome. And Brett, do you want to add anything from Athena Health side and on your value framework and kind of tying into what Alex mentioned?
Yeah, sure. I'll try and add. I think Alex had a lot of great points, and there's a lot of things that she has said throughout that really resonate with me. Particularly that it's not necessarily one silver bullet answer or one channel that you use to enable your clients or even to enable your own internal folks. So, as I mentioned earlier, we've really tried to take the approach of thinking about the end customer and what it means for them to have value, and then take that back to the product and to the customer success managers and so forth, and use that to guide what we do. And part of what we've tried to do is we said, hey, if as a medical practice, you're competing in value-based care, you need to make sure you close patient care gaps. If you do that, you'll get reimbursed well, and then you'll have happy patients, and they'll come back. Well, then how do we instrument that? And how do we give customer success managers the tools that allow them to see if that's happening? But how do we also make sure the same tools sit inside the software so the practice can see how they're doing? And how do we build those tools together with product and with our support organizations so that we're all using kind of the same view? That's effectively the approach that we've used. And one thing that makes it probably a little bit easier for us than Alex, as an example, is that we're very much focused on one industry vertical, which is healthcare. if you look at a Salesforce, they serve all industry verticals, so it can be a little bit more complex in some ways there. Not to say that what we do isn't complex too. But that gives you a flavor for, to your question, how do we enable, all of the organization to align around value? We collaborate in that way across functions, using the end customer as kind of our guide. But then thinking about if we're going to build tools and we're going to train on them, how do we make sure we're using the same tools at the customer service level as well as at the client level and align product around that as well? And to come back to something that Alex mentioned earlier, there's multiple channels that you're going to want to use to enable clients as well as to enable CSMs and other folks internally. But a client does not necessarily just depend upon or want to engage with just a CSM or with customer support. They want to be guided inside the product and how to be successful. So we've tried to invest in embedding videos or embedding pop-ups inside the solution that help people see what they need to do to be successful. In some cases, clients want to engage with their peer group. They don't necessarily want to talk to the vendor. They want to talk to others that are in their business and see, well, what does it mean to get value, and how do you use this software tool to get value? So we very much have tried to harness the success community, and we use the Salesforce product to do that, to share ideas and content with our clients, but also create user groups for them where they can kind of talk amongst themselves and share tips and best practices. And then obviously things like user groups and so forth, which obviously Gainsight's quite great at, are key too. So it's a multi-pronged, multi-channel approach that we need to use in this day and age because different people learn and engage and resonate with things in different ways.
Awesome. Well, you guys have done both a great job of kind of elaborating on how you guys developed your framework for everyone to understand how we go move forward with the client overall. But you've also kind of touched on really our next question, which is overall, how do we do this at scale? And Alex, you mentioned a little bit more about the initial intentional focus on a self-service type of onboarding. So would love to hear your perspective on that again, and just how you guys have gone about that overall. And then Brett, you kind of just touched on it there as well, about understanding through the feedback of the customers how to approach them in that omni-channel. So you kind of touched on how you guys do it now. So but would love to hear when you guys started realizing the need to do that from your side, Brett. But Alex, if you want to talk a little bit more about your scaled approach,
sure.
The audience would love to hear more about that.
So I'm constantly thinking about scale. Everything I do is about how do I scale that motion. Similar to Brett, we have a really thriving Tableau community. I think that is, I can't even say how valuable that is. And in terms of that, customers learning from customers and the insight that we get from monitoring those channels and interacting with the customers therein. When I think about scale, that's one way of doing it. Another way is through our partners. I know a lot of organizations have partner channels that we do, and I really think you need to think about shared success. And what shared success means is how do you have that close connection with your partners so that your partner is delivering the type of customer success that you wish to see. So how are you enabling your partners and in customer success and getting back those results? So that I think that's very important as well. And then obviously there are different kind of digital channels and things that you can use for that. One of the, obviously being global, one of the things that we think about is scaling out to different markets. So how do we deliver at different time zones and in different languages and meet the needs of those different customer groups based on vertical and interest and so forth. So like I said before, communities really comes into play. We have one-to-many onboarding sessions that are in all three theaters, as we call them. So any customer at any time can participate in those. And I think, there's other channels that we use as well. Like as Brett said, you need to be where the customer is in that moment. Too often in the past, what we did is the customer had a delayed response to their question. I want to be where the customer is at that point in time to be able to answer the question that they have. So I think, as success professionals, we really need to think about how we embed things in the product, but also thinking, as we said, omni-channels. What are the different channels that we can be in, and so that we can have a personalized response to what that customer needs at that point in time, because not all customers are the same and their needs will vary depending on their maturity. And I think that's another thing that to think about is putting the customer at the center and really thinking about maturity of that customer and what they'll need at that point in time. and then the different avenues that we can actually reach them. So lots of different things there in terms of how we look at that. And, a lot of times the best thing is actually our customer success manager kind of acting like I'll put it, a concierge, knowing where to direct the customer for that point in time and providing them with the information they need, the tool they need, or, directing them to Trailblazer, which is a phenomenal way that, we can upskill people on our products.
Absolutely. And then Brett, just to kind of reframe it from the comment you made on the previous question, you mentioned leveraging in-app to some degree. And so again, if you could talk a little bit more about that, and then really just when you guys understood the need that we had to go that direction to really support the clients in the first year.
Yeah, sure. From an in-app perspective, in some ways we've been doing this for a long time. And in some ways we don't do it nearly well enough, and we're trying to restart. So one of the things that has been exciting to me about our product set is we've always been very focused on, since everyone is in a single instance of our software, and we have a huge amount of data, and we've highly instrumented what they do. We've always been very good at surfacing up to our users how they as a user or how they as an organization are doing compared to benchmark, and allowing them to see, are you in the top quartile in this thing compared to others in your peer set? And so that's been powerful. And then, it's given people insight into where they can do better. Where we, have recently been playing more catch up is when it comes to actual functionality of the product, and getting certain things done inside the product. How do we embed those, the tips and tricks and the training, and in some ways automate some of the searching and enablement that you would want inside the product, rather than requiring people to go to a success community or to talk to a trainer. And that's a newer thing for us. But as we've been rolling out new features recently, we've been a lot more deliberate about that. So there's a critical new feature that we think is key and can help our practices perform better. We actually, as part of that new feature, as you start to consume it, you can click on a video right there that in app, in 20 seconds will give you the tips and tricks on how to do it. There are pop-ups that can guide you along the way that you can dismiss. And those are useful and I think exciting things that help. And we all as consumers know that if we can't figure out something right away, we'll often abandon it. If we have to go to do a Google search or to reach out to someone for help, it's just going to slow us down and it's going to be frustrating, and we don't want that. So that gives you a little bit of a sense for how we've kind of thought about it and evolved. You also asked the question about what have you learned over time, and what has caused some kind of recent new learnings for you around what you need to do different. The one thing I didn't share earlier that it's probably worth sharing, it's not everything is rosy and perfect, in what we do. And I know that's true for every single organization out there. It's probably true for Alex too. One thing that we I think we do really well is, we take Net Promoter Score, very seriously. We deeply instrument, like all the interactions we have with the clients, and we ask them for feedback all the time. On any given day, we've got, in the US, 350,000 end users kind of crawling through our software and using it to run their medical practices. We survey every one of those end users, at least once a year in app, and ask them to how likely are they to recommend us, that NPS survey. But we also ask them, what do you like and not like about this, about the product, and what would you change? Our response rates are surprisingly high. We get almost a 40% response rate, and it's really informative. Likewise, we do the client NPS surveys where we ask a decision maker, how likely are you to recommend us? And we religiously look at that and see how we're doing. And we get verbatim feedback from that. And we've got an almost 45% response rate we get from decision makers. So we've got very good responsiveness from our clients. But here's the punchline. Over the past several years, we've seen our client NPS grow, and it's been great. But one of the things that we weren't looking at closely enough is how that compared for the first year client versus a tenured client. And one of the things that we did see start to drift about 2 years ago is that the first year clients had an NPS that was about half of our more tenured clients. And you could say, oh, well, that's all right. It takes a while to ramp up. They're in their first year. Once they get tenured, they're much happier, and that's great. And, they can't leave in the first year anyway because they've made such a big investment. Well, that's not the right mindset to have, obviously. So a recent learning for us has been that we need to focus even more on, as part of that day one experience, that day 60 experience, that day 120 experience, that all along the way, we're thinking about how do we make it easier for clients to be productive with less effort so that hopefully they are seeing more delight in the early days than they are today. And, that's been interesting. So, a lesson for me has been that you need to constantly be looking at, what your clients are telling you. You need to constantly be stratifying, the data and the insights you're getting back to see where there are opportunities for improvement. And then, when you see those opportunities, you need to, adapt and address. And so, while a lot of the things I talked about earlier that we're doing around that, that time to value, around that first year experience, I'm excited about, we've had to evolve that and really improve that in the past 18 months based upon some of those learnings. So hopefully that's helpful too. And, also, is me being somewhat honest that it's not all perfect, and, we need to constantly evolve and learn from where there's opportunities for improvement.
Yeah, and it's kind of a good topic to bring up because it is so important. Obviously, you mentioned, Brett, the hyper focus on the MPS and the cohort of first years to really be a relieving insight into understanding that it was lower. The notion of how important it is to not just think about time to value as in the whole year concept, but in actually a very laser focused time frame. And so my question for both of you is, given that we all know that risks are not fun, but they're evil, or they're a necessary evil in some regard, just kind of curious is when you guys see maybe the train coming off the tracks, you see those small indicators, what is the approach of both of your organizations to rally as one unit, not as an individual department, to go help bring that client back on within maybe that smaller time frame? So Alex, I'll kind of kick it over to you if you kind of enlighten the group on that for you guys.
Sure. I mean, I think it's always very important, no matter how long your customer has been with you, is to think about customer health. And all of us probably measure customer health in different ways depending on your product and your environment. But I think that is critically important because having been in a role in the past where, leading success teams, being in the business, executing, I think a lot of times when risk kind of comes up, we're too late. If it's just, a month before the renewal, that doesn't give you much time to kind of rally the troops. So I think understanding your customer health, understanding where they were, looking at all the different signals, and then being able, as you say, to rally the team. And I think it's very important. It goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, is it can be anyone on that greater expanded account team that can say, hey, I'm seeing these things. We're a data company, so a lot of what we see, we track and we measure and we have a look and we see what levers we can pull. But sometimes it can come from a customer conversation. We could have a technical account manager, they could be having a conversation and realizing that there's issues there. So I think it's very important internally to think about customer health and risk reviews. How are you going to mobilize teams and where are you going to make investment? Because I think sometimes it's not necessarily the technical side of the house where they need help. It could be that they're failing to see value because maybe philosophically they haven't made the change in terms of how to use your product. Maybe their expectations weren't met. So I think it's very important that don't wait 120 days out from the renewal to jump in and re-engage the customer. That might not be enough time. You really need to think from the get-go in terms of what's going on. I remember once having a customer where it was a day after the renewal, and the team decided to put this customer at risk. And even though we knew we had another year till the next renewal, we knew that just some of the things that we saw during the renewal cycle, we knew that we were going to have issues during the year in different areas. So the team came together, they created a risk mitigation plan. It was the AE, the CSM, we had the renewals manager, we had technical support, everyone rallied around and then came back on a regular basis to kind of update leadership, but also to kind of where else do we need help? And sometimes, like I said, that means we'll make an investment in that customer because we really want to see them being successful. And that can be helping them in technical area or otherwise. But I really think that's really important, especially with your first year customers. Like I said before, your first year customers, and Brett said this as well, is like, I'm constantly looking at them because that space is evolving and their needs are evolving. And so you really need to be aware in terms of, in that first year, what are signals that can tell you that that customer is going off the rail, and how are you going to respond? Do you have like a SWAT team that you can pull into that, or can you direct the customer in some way? But I think that's really critically important in first years. And even as you go along, you may find in your customer maturity that there might be third year or fourth year customers that you're starting to see a downturn. And why is that? So I think you need to be constantly looking and evolving, as Brett said, to address that, because risk can come at any time.
Brett, anything to add to that from Athena Health and how you guys approach the kind of the risk concept within that early time frame?
Yeah, I'll attempt to add to it. There are a lot of great points Alex had. One thing that, as I reflect on the conversation we've had so far, which is interesting, is it sounds like both at Salesforce and at Athena Health, there's a real culture of thinking about kind of preserving the client, helping the client be successful, and just a cross-organizational commitment to that. And I think that building that type of culture at any organization is really important, and not every organization necessarily has that. And I think that helps me a lot, probably helps Alex a lot at Salesforce too. We do, for every one of our clients, monitor their health, and we use a health score set of metrics to look at that. And we utilize some of the Gainsight functionality for that. In addition to that, we have a client analytics team that is basically looking across our entire client base. And we're constantly running analysis to see where we think things might be trending off track. And we try and get proactive and engage our CSMs and use calls to action to get them to drive outreach. In some cases you're surprised, and Alex talked about how that can happen even when you've just done a renewal or you're about to do one, and that happens. And I think the key is that when that does happen, you've created it, at least within customer success, a culture that, hey, it's okay, we're all here to help you, and it's not your fault. Let's just all rally behind it. We never want to lose a customer, and let's figure out what we can do to preserve them. And if we need to tell them that we made a mistake and we're sorry, and here's what we're going to do to fix it, we'll do that. That's kind of the approach we have. And fortunately, we've gotten to a place where the culture has expanded beyond customer success to all of the company. And so we've got the wherewithal and the commitment internally that if we need to bring in the product team to talk to our customer, if we need to have someone from the operations group do that, we need to pitch in to help, we're going to do it. To me, I think the key thing is you got to monitor. You got to make sure that if things come up, even if you didn't see them through the monitoring, that people are, ready to go and they're committed to try and do the right thing to jump in. And if you keep that mindset, and that mindset pervades, the entire company, great things happen. And that's what, I think has been in many ways happening for us, and sounds like for Salesforce too. And, things always get in your way, and you need to evolve to keep treading in the right directions. That's how I think about it.
Awesome. Well, I know we're winding down here. There is one other question that I definitely want to get to. It's definitely about the strategic partnership we have with our clients in that year one concept, right? So obviously a lot of what we've been talking about is how do we as an organization really drive that for the client, understanding their needs, how we approach them, and rallying the troops if they fall off the train, if you will, or the train tracks of some sort. But then there's also kind of the accountability to the client. And Alex, you kind of mentioned it. Sometimes you run into just like small philosophical differences. It's not so much about the product feature, but it's how do we get utility out of that? And so, Brett, just to have you start off, what would be some advice you'd give to that potential audience member out there who's doing their own research on a CS platform or wherever that is? Like, what would you be your advice to, like, hey, how should you prep for the implementation with whatever you choose for whatever system you're looking at?
Just to clarify your question, so a customer success platform like Gainsight, is that
pretty much like just how would you recommend any potential client looking at any kind of software platform, like preparing themselves for that so-called implementation or onboarding?
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I see. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, look, I think it's really important that as part of the sales process, an organization that's done a good job of really understanding what are the business problems that potential client has and is trying to solve, and making sure that you've framed out and set the right expectations around how your software solution can potentially help solve those problems. And then it's key that is, then the onboarding process takes root, that you revisit that and you have that conversation again with the client. And sometimes the person that bought the thing is different than the person that's actually going to use it or implement it. And it's better up front if there's a mismatch to acknowledge it and potentially not even move forward if it's not the right thing, for that organization. I'd rather debook or charge back a sale and not take a client live that's not the right fit for the solution than to move forward. And then it's also critically important as well that as you are ramping that client up onto that solution, that you're also setting the right expectations with them around what success looks like and what they need to be doing to be prepared for success. One of the things that is interesting in my world, we're managing the medical billing and the patient billing for medical practices that we serve. If a client goes live and starts using our software and starts using our services before they're ready, it can have disastrous financial consequences. It can really slow down their cash flow and their ability to deliver great care. So I need to make sure that my clients know that they've gotten the training they need, that they've configured the solution appropriately, that they are truly set up for success before they go live. Because if they're not, it's going to be worse for them, and then over time, worse for me. So, one thing is that in some cases, you need to be prepared to tell a client you're not ready right now. And here's why. As fast as you might want to go, as much as you might think you need this, we know you're not ready for it. And if you move forward, you're going to be worse off. And a lot of times people are afraid to have that conversation because it could mean that revenue is delayed. It could mean that other metrics don't look good. Maybe that you're in growth mode, you're trying to grow your client base by a certain amount, and maybe you don't get that because of that. But it's more important that you make sure the client is truly ready and that they're going to be set up for long-term success and long-term value. Because if they're not, it's going to create a bigger problem later. So those are some of the things that I would say as I reflect on your question.
Awesome. Alex, anything you would like to add to that?
Yeah, all really great points from Brett. I mean, one of the things that the team thinks about a lot is what do we mean by an engaged customer? And, how do we rate customer engagement? And a lot of what Brett said really resonated with me because you have to have those conversations up front. In terms of when a customer's coming on board, like what is it going to take to make them successful with this? And that means having a bit of skin in the game. When we're talking about how we want to achieve value, well, what are they going to do on their end to help support that? For example, if they need to get their team upskilled, is there a commitment to that? Because we know that upskilling and training causes stickiness within the product, because then you're going to come into the product and you're going to know how to use it faster, acceleration of time to value. So I think it is about having those conversations and getting that kind of agreement that we're in this together. I think that's really, really important. And the customers where I see that kind of commitment from the top down, you see that kind of success. Because sometimes you're going to come into the situation where the person that bought it is not the person that you're actually doing the implementation with. And they may have questions themselves as to why was this purchased. So I think that's really important that in that sales cycle, we start to set the foundations up for success so that when our teams are engaged, that we have that partnership. I think that's critically important.
Awesome. No, both great pieces of advice. And obviously, hopefully everyone out there resonates with you guys or helps put a light bulb on overall. We got about a minute 30 left, so I'll just do a quick lightning round with both of you here. In closing, if you could go back, like I mentioned, 3 to 5 years and offer one piece of advice, what would you tell yourself? And Alex, I'll kick it off with you on this one.
It's definitely about the topic we've talked about today is make sure you spend a lot of time getting your customers set up in year one for success. I remember thinking about this 4 years ago, realizing the criticality of it. It still remains forefront in my mind today. Awesome.
And Brett, how about you?
Well, I would echo what Alex said. So in the spirit of adding something different, the one thing that I would reflect on is that, customer success is a team sport. And it may be that if you join a new organization, not everyone believes that out of the gate. But I think it's critically important that you build the connections inside your organization to all functions and get them thinking about the customer and the outcomes and over time kind of build a commitment and a culture around working with you to deliver those outcomes. If you do that, you can be so much more successful and it's just so much more fun than if you try and go it your own. And, when you're more junior, and this was certainly true of me in my earlier days, I probably tried more to be a hero and do it within my own function or on my own, rather than do it as a team with all the functions around me. And that would be something that I would, do differently every single time now if I could go back and do it all again.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for joining us today. I hope everyone out there thought it was a useful topic and discussion, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the afternoon.